Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most visually wild and intense openings in the entire Bible, the first 5 chapters of the book of Ezekiel. We're going to follow a prophet's journey from an absolutely mind-bending vision of God to a series of shocking performances where his own body becomes the message.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to track Ezekiel's mission as it unfolds. We'll start with that incredible vision of God's glory, then get into his really difficult calling, understand his role as a watchman, witness his bizarre prophetic street theater, and finally, see the severe final sign of judgment.
All right, so we begin right where Ezekiel begins, in captivity. He's far from home, far from the temple, in a place that must have felt totally God-forsaken. But, that's precisely where the heavens decide to just rip open.
This really sets the stage perfectly. See, Ezekiel is a priest. His entire life revolved around the temple in Jerusalem. But now, he's in exile in Babylon. He is absolutely not where he's supposed to be to encounter God. And yet, that is exactly what happens. And what a vision it is. Honestly, it's almost impossible to fully wrap your head around. There's this storm cloud, flashing with fire. Out of it come these 4 living creatures, each with 4 different faces, and they move like lightning. Then you have these incredible gyroscopic wheels covered in eyes that move with the creatures. Above them, a platform like dazzling crystal, and on that, a sapphire throne with a figure that looks like a man, just glowing like fire and surrounded by a rainbow. It is just an overwhelming, stunning display of divine majesty.
What Ezekiel is seeing here is what the Bible calls the glory of the Lord. And let's be clear, this isn't just some symbol of God. It's the perceptible, tangible presence of God himself. It's the kind of presence that made Moses' face shine, the kind that filled the temple. But now, it's here, in Babylon.
And this just hammers home the crucial point of chapter 1. For these exiled Israelites who felt like their whole world had just ended, this vision was a radical, powerful statement of hope. God hadn't been left behind in a ruined Jerusalem. No. His throne is mobile. He is sovereign, and he is present with them, even in their absolute darkest hour.
So after seeing this incredible vision, Ezekiel just falls on his face. I mean, who wouldn't? But God tells him to stand up. The time for awe is over. The time for work is about to begin. Because God is about to give Ezekiel a really, really hard calling.
God commissions Ezekiel, calling him Son of Man, a term that really just highlights his humanity in the face of all this divine glory. The mission sounds simple enough, go to the people of Israel, but wow, God's description of that audience is brutal. They are a rebellious nation, impudent and stiff-hearted. God is setting the expectation right from the get-go. This is not going to be easy.
Then comes this incredibly powerful, symbolic act. God gives Ezekiel a scroll and tells him to eat it. And this isn't some message of comfort and joy. No, it's filled with lamentations and mourning and woe. By eating it, Ezekiel is commanded to completely internalize this difficult word, to make it part of his very being before he can even think about speaking it to others.
So the key lesson here is pretty stark. Ezekiel's success isn't going to be measured by how many people listen to him or repent. God basically says whether they listen or not isn't the point. His job is simply to be obedient and to deliver the message faithfully. That's it.
So having accepted this very difficult message, Ezekiel's specific role is now defined, with a powerful metaphor, one that carries a really heavy weight of responsibility. Back in the ancient world, a watchman's job was absolutely critical. If he saw an enemy army approaching and he failed to sound the alarm, the blood of the entire city was on his hands. It was a life or death role. And God tells Ezekiel, "I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel."
And the stakes are just incredibly high. God makes it crystal clear. Ezekiel's job isn't to force people to change, but simply to warn them. If he warns a wicked person who refuses to listen, well, that person is responsible for their own fate. But Ezekiel is in the clear. But if he fails to give that warning, he becomes accountable for their destruction. The weight of that is just immense.
This chapter really establishes a principle that you see all through the Bible. With knowledge comes responsibility. Ezekiel can't just stay quiet. He has to speak the truth God gave him, no matter how hard it is or how people react.
So it turns out words are just not enough for this stiff-hearted people. So God commands Ezekiel to stop talking for a while and start performing. His own body, his actions, they become a living, breathing prophecy of what's coming.
Okay, first, he's told to create a diorama.
He takes a clay tile, scratches a little map of Jerusalem on it, and then he builds tiny siege ramps and battering rams all around it. And then, the most chilling part, he places an iron pan between himself and his model city. That pan symbolizes the hard, impenetrable barrier that sin has created between God and his people.
Then, the performance gets deeply personal and just grueling. God commands Ezekiel to lie on his left side for 390 days, 1 day for each year of the northern kingdom of Israel's sin. After that, he has to flip over and lie on his right side for 40 days for the southern kingdom of Judah's sin. He is literally, physically embodying the crushing weight of his nation's long history of rebellion.
And while he's doing all this, even his diet is a prophecy. He's eating this tiny, measured amount of bread made from a mix of different grains, basically siege food, and he's drinking a small, measured amount of water. This is a visceral preview of the horrific famine that's going to grip Jerusalem during its final days. The whole point of all this bizarre behavior was for it to be a shocking, unavoidable sign. You couldn't just walk past and ignore the prophet lying in the street for over a year. It was a message designed to completely shatter their apathy and show them that the coming judgment was going to be terribly, terribly real.
The prophetic drama now reaches its climax with one final, deeply symbolic, and pretty graphic act of judgment.
Ezekiel is commanded to take a sharp sword and shave his head and his beard, which for a priest was a huge sign of disgrace and mourning. He then divides the hair into 3 piles. He burns 1/3, he strikes another 1/3 with the sword, and he scatters the last 1/3 to the wind. God then explains this is exactly what's going to happen to the people of Jerusalem. 1/3 will die from famine and plague inside the city, 1/3 will be killed by the sword outside, and a final 1/3 will be scattered into exile.
But right in the middle of this message of total devastation, there is this tiny glimmer of hope. God tells him to take just a few of those hairs and tuck them safely into the hem of his robe. This is the first mention of the remnant, that small group that God will preserve through the judgment to carry on his covenant promises.
So as we wrap up these first 5 chapters, these are the core themes that have been laid out for us. We've seen God's awesome, mobile glory. We've felt the crushing weight of a prophet's call and his personal accountability. We've witnessed the tangible and severe consequences of sin, but also that persistent promise of a future, even if it's only for a few.
And this leaves us with a really challenging thought. Ezekiel's entire life became a sign meant to get people's attention. It kind of forces us to ask, what are the signs in our own world, maybe in our own lives, that are trying to wake us up? And are we paying attention?